The Outcast Princess. The gleaming spires of Astria Prime stretched toward the triple moons, their crystalline surfaces refracting light across the capital city. Within the highest tower of the imperial palace, Princess Ilara stood alone at her window, watching her people move in perfect synchrony below. Their steps matched, their hands gestured in unison, their heads turned simultaneously, all guided by the telepathic network that connected every Astrian mind. Every mind except hers. Ilara pressed her palm against the cool glass, her luminescent skin casting a soft blue glow in the darkened chamber. 27 years of life, and still nothing but silence in her mind. No whispers of collective thought, no gentle current of shared emotions, no belonging to the great interconnected consciousness that was the foundation of Astrian society. "Your Highness," came a voice from the doorway. Navy, her attendant, stood with eyes downcast. Unlike the other royal servants who communicated primarily through thought, Navi had been specially trained to use verbal speech for Ilara's benefit, a special accommodation for the defective princess. "The Emperor requests your presence in the council chamber." Ilara nodded, smoothing the iridescent fabric of her ceremonial robes. Did he say why? She already knew the answer but asked anyway. "No, Your Highness." Navy's expression betrayed nothing, but Ilara noticed the slight shift in his posture. He knew something. Something transmitted across the network she couldn't access. The council chamber fell silent as Ilara entered. 12 high ministers sat in a semicircle around her father, Emperor Turan, whose stern face showed no recognition of his daughter. Only the subtle glow patterns beneath his skin, shifting from royal blue to a troubled purple, betrayed any emotion at all. "Ilara," he said simply, using spoken language in what she recognized as a deliberate slight. Among Astrians, verbal communication was considered primitive, used only when necessary with outsiders, or, in her case, the neurologically impaired. She bowed formally. "Father, council ministers, the decision has been made," Emperor Turan continued. "You will depart for Outpost Helix in 3 days' time. There, you will serve as cultural liaison for visiting diplomats from non-telepathic species." Ilara maintained her composure, though her skin flickered involuntarily with shock, pale yellow patterns of distress rippling across her arms. "This is not exile," Minister Vex added, clearly responding to some unspoken concern raised in the telepathic conversation Ilara couldn't hear. "It is an opportunity to serve the Empire in a capacity suited to your unique condition." Unique condition, the polite term for her broken brain. The missing neural pathways that should have connected her to the collective mind from birth, the defect that made her an embarrassment to the royal bloodline. "I understand," Ilara said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "When will I return?" The silence that followed was answer enough. This was not a temporary assignment. "Outpost Helix requires a permanent liaison," her father finally said. "You will be provided with all appropriate accommodations." Translation: she was being hidden away where she could no longer embarrass the royal family, where visitors from other worlds would not question why an Astrian princess moved alone, spoke alone, thought alone. "May I ask why now?" Ilara ventured. Minister Lyra, head of interplanetary relations, actually spoke aloud to answer. "Earth has appointed a new scientific envoy to the outpost. Dr. Maya Santos will arrive in 7 days, as humans lack telepathic abilities. Your familiarity with verbal communication makes you uniquely qualified to facilitate relations." The unspoken message was clear. Who better to deal with a species without telepathy than the princess without telepathy? That night, Ilara packed her few treasured possessions, a holographic image of her mother, who had died when Ilara was young, a crystal from the royal gardens that changed colors with touch, the only thing in the palace that responded to her differently than to others, and her data tablets containing her private research, studies on non-telepathic species and their methods of connection. Her research had been the one thing that gave her purpose, while the court whispered, mentally, where they thought she couldn't perceive their judgment. About her deficiency, Ilara had turned her isolation into expertise. She understood how beings without telepathic networks formed bonds, built societies, and created meaning. Knowledge no other Estrine bothered to acquire. 3 days later, she boarded the sleek imperial vessel alone. No farewell ceremony, no royal procession, just a quiet removal of an inconvenient princess. Course set for Outpost Helix, the navigator announced, avoiding eye contact. 3-day journey in quantum fold. Ilara watched through the viewport as her homeworld shrank to a glittering blue sphere, then vanished as the ship entered fold space. She felt a strange mixture of grief and relief. Grief for the connection she'd never had, relief from the constant reminder of her difference. Maybe among the stars, on a station filled with diverse species, being different wouldn't matter quite so much. Dr. Maya Santos examined her quarters on Outpost Helix with a mix of excitement and trepidation. The circular room was clearly designed for non-Estrian physiology, with furnishings that accommodated her human form rather than the taller, more slender build of her hosts. Environmental settings adjusted to Earth standard, announced the station's eye. Gravity set to 1.02 g oxygen-nitrogen mix at 78.1% nitrogen, 20.9% oxygen. Trace gases at Earth normal. Thank you, Maya replied, unpacking her equipment. As Earth's first xenobiologist assigned to an Estrine outpost, she carried the weight of humanity's scientific reputation on her shoulders. The door chimed softly. Dr. Santos, your orientation guide has arrived. Maya straightened her uniform, the deep blue of the Earth Science Directorate, and touched the door panel. Standing in the corridor was an Estrine unlike any Maya had seen in her briefing materials. While the typical Estrine had skin that glowed with a uniform blue luminescence, this one's skin displayed complex patterns of light that shifted and changed, currently a calm teal with ripples of gold along her arms. Dr. Santos, the Estrine said, speaking aloud rather than using the translator device Maya had expected. I am Princess Ilara of Astria Prime. I've been assigned as your liaison during your stay. Maya bowed slightly, recalling her diplomatic training. Your Highness, it's an honor. I wasn't informed I'd be working with royalty. Something flickered across Ilara's expression, a momentary pattern of darker blue that Maya couldn't interpret. My assignment here is recent, Ilara explained. If you're settled, I can show you the research facilities. As they walked through the curved corridors of the outpost, Maya noticed how other Estrines reacted to Ilara. They would notice her. Their skin would pulse briefly with some communication, and they would divert their paths or lower their eyes. There was a tension that Maya's anthropological training couldn't miss. The xenobiology lab has been prepared according to Earth specifications, Ilara was saying, leading Maya into a spacious laboratory. Though I took the liberty of adding some equipment you might find useful for comparative neural studies. Maya examined the additional instruments with surprise. These are perfect for the research I'm hoping to conduct. How did you know? I studied human scientific methods, Ilara replied. Your species has developed fascinating approaches to understanding neural diversity, given your non-telepathic nature. Non-telepathic nature, Maya repeated with a small smile. That makes it sound like a deficiency. The patterns on Ilara's skin shifted rapidly, purple, then yellow, then settling into a subdued green. An interesting perspective. Among my people, it would indeed be considered a lack. Maya studied the alien princess more carefully. There was something in her tone, a tension behind her perfect linguistic command. And what would you consider it? Maya asked. Ilara's eyes, larger than human eyes, and with vertical pupils that narrowed slightly, focused intently on Maya. I would consider it a different path of evolution, one with its own strengths. Over the following weeks, Maya found herself working closely with Ilara. The princess had an unexpected depth of knowledge about interspecies biology and communication, far beyond what would be expected of a political appointee. She also displayed a curiosity about human culture that seemed rare among Estrenes, who generally viewed other species as interesting but primitive. So humans form bonds without any telepathic connection at all? Ilara asked one evening as they analyzed comparative brain scans, just through external cues and verbal language. And touch, Maya added. Non-verbal communication. Shared experiences. The architecture of human connection is complex, but remarkably robust. Robust? Ilara repeated, her skin patterns showing that thoughtful swirl of teal and gold Maya had come to recognize. Yes, I've observed that. Telepathic links are efficient but vulnerable to disruption. Your methods seem more resilient. Something in her tone made Maya pause her work. Ilara, may I ask you something personal? The princess tensed visibly, her luminescence dimming slightly. You may ask. The other Estrenes here, they treat you differently, and you speak aloud constantly, even with your own people. Why? For a long moment, Ilara was silent, her skin cycling through patterns Maya had never seen before, dark blues and purples that seemed to spiral inward. Because I am different, she finally said, her voice soft but steady. I was born without the neural pathways to connect to the collective mind. I cannot send or receive telepathic communication. Among my people, this is considered a severe disability, a defect worthy of hiding away. The revelation stunned Maya. They sent you here because you're not telepathic. They sent me here because a non-telepathic princess is an embarrassment to the royal line. Ilara corrected, a bitter edge to her words. And because they thought I might be useful with humans who share my limitation. Maya felt a surge of indignation on Ilara's behalf. It's not a limitation. It's just different neurology. Try telling that to a society built entirely around shared consciousness, Ilara replied. But her skin had brightened slightly, showing patterns that Maya now recognized as indicating emotional warmth. As the days passed into weeks, their work together developed into a friendship unlike any Maya had experienced. Ilara's perspective on communication and connection, shaped by her lifetime of exclusion, offered insights that revolutionized Maya's research. And Maya's acceptance of Ilara as she was, without judgment or pity, seemed to allow the princess to flourish. They were analyzing data from a neural mapping study when the outpost alarm sounded. Emergency protocol initiated, announced the station eye. All personnel report to Central Command. In the command center, chaos reigned. Estrenes moved with uncharacteristic disorganization, their skin patterns flashing in discordant rhythms. What's happening? Maya asked. Station Commander Thel turned to them, his luminescence pulsing rapidly with stress patterns. We've received reports from Astria Prime. There's an outbreak, some kind of neural disruption affecting the collective mind. Telepathic connections are degrading across several major population centers. Ilara stepped forward. What kind of disruption? Is it affecting individual neural function, or just the connective pathways? Just the connective pathways so far, Thel replied, seemingly forgetting his usual disdain for the princess. But it's spreading rapidly. The Imperial Medical Division is concerned. Maya caught the hesitation. They're more than concerned, aren't they? This is serious. Thel's skin darkened. Yes, they're calling it a crisis. If the collective mind fragments completely. He didn't need to finish. Maya had studied enough about Estrene society to understand. Their entire civilization, from basic functions to advanced governance, relied on that shared consciousness. Without it, chaos would ensue. Have they identified the cause? Ilara asked, already moving to a data terminal. Unknown pathogen, possibly engineered. It targets the precise neural structures that enable telepathic communication. Maya watched as Ilara accessed the incoming medical data, her expression intensely focused. These patterns, the princess murmured. They look like the inverse of my neural maps. What do you mean? Maya moved closer to examine the scans. The pathogen is attacking exactly what I lack, Ilara explained, her voice quickening with realization. The specialized glial structures that facilitate telepathic transmission. Commander Thell's skin flashed with sudden understanding. You would be immune. Not just immune, Maya said, the implications becoming clear. Her brain might hold the key to fighting this. If we can understand why these structures never developed in Ilara's brain. A communication alert sounded. On the main screen appeared the stern face of Emperor Toran himself. Outpost Helix, he began, his voice grave. The situation has escalated. Central Medical Command requests the immediate return of Princess Ilara to Astria Prime. Her condition may provide critical insight into this pathogen. Ilara stepped into view of the transmission. Father. The Emperor's expression remained impassive, but Maya noticed a subtle change in his luminescence, a flicker of what might have been regret. You are needed, daughter, he said simply. After the transmission ended, Ilara turned to Maya, her skin showing complex patterns of anxiety and determination. I must return, she said. But She hesitated, then continued with quiet intensity. I would ask that you accompany me as scientific advisor. Your expertise in comparative neurology could be valuable. Maya understood what went unspoken, that Ilara was asking not just for her scientific expertise, but for an ally. Someone who saw her value when her own people did not. Of course, Maya replied without hesitation. We'll figure this out together. As they prepared for emergency transport to Astria Prime, Maya wondered what awaited them on the homeworld of a species that had cast out its princess for being different, only to discover they might need her difference to survive. The bridge between worlds. The royal vessel cut through quantum space, racing toward Astria Prime with its unexpected passengers, a princess returning from exile, and the first human ever granted permission to visit the Astrine homeworld. In the ship's laboratory, Ilara and Maya worked tirelessly, analyzing the steadily worsening reports from the planet. 17 major cities now affected, Ilara said, her voice tight as she studied the latest transmission. The disruption pattern is accelerating. Maya looked up from her microscope, where she'd been examining Ilara's blood samples. These antibodies in your system are fascinating. It's almost as if your body evolved to protect against exactly this kind of neural pathogen. Not evolved, Ilara corrected. Engineered. Maya paused. What do you mean? The patterns on Ilara's skin darkened to a troubled indigo. I've suspected for some time that my condition wasn't natural. The royal bloodline has produced telepaths of exceptional strength for 20 generations without a single anomaly. The statistical probability of a spontaneous mutation like mine is virtually zero. You think someone deliberately altered your neural development. Who would do that? And why? Those, Ilara said with a grim smile, are excellent questions. The ship dropped out of quantum fold, and the blue-green sphere of Astria Prime filled the viewport. Under different circumstances, Maya would have been awestruck by the shimmering cities visible even from orbit, their crystalline towers catching and amplifying the light of the system's binary stars. But now she could see dark patches spreading across the metropolises, power failures as the telepathically controlled infrastructure began to fail. Their landing in the capital was met not with the ceremonial guard Ilara would normally warrant, but with a medical team led by a tall Astrine whose skin patterns pulsed with urgency. Princess Ilara, Dr. Santos, I am Chief Medical Officer Vira, she said, speaking aloud for Maya's benefit. We must proceed directly to the Imperial Research Facility. As their transport moved through the city, Maya witnessed the spreading effects of the neural disruption. Astrines moved erratically, bumping into one another, their movements no longer synchronized by shared consciousness. Some stood completely still, their skin patterns frozen in expressions of confusion and fear. It's worse than they reported, Ilara murmured, pressing her hand against the window. They're completely disconnected. The Imperial Research Facility was a vast complex of interconnected spheres suspended above a crystal lake. Inside, despite the chaos gripping the rest of the city, Scientists moved with purpose, their work apparently unaffected by the telepathic disruption. How are they functioning so well? Maya asked as they were led through pristine corridors. Neuroblockers, CMO Vera explained. They're temporarily suppressing telepathic function in essential personnel to prevent disruption to critical systems. It's uncomfortable for most Astrians, but necessary. Ilara's expression tightened. So now they choose to experience my reality. The Emperor waited in the central laboratory, surrounded by the Empire's top scientists. His imposing figure seemed diminished somehow, the royal blue luminescence of his skin dulled with strain. Ilara, he acknowledged, then turned to Maya with evident surprise. And the human scientist. I did not authorize your presence here. I did, Ilara replied before Maya could speak. Dr. Santos is an expert in comparative ptenoneurology, with specific focus on non-telepathic communication systems. Her perspective is essential. Emperor Torin studied his daughter for a long moment, then inclined his head slightly. Very well. Chief Scientist Zell stepped forward, activating a holographic display of neural pathways. The pathogen targets the specialized glial cells that form the biological foundation of our telepathic network. It appears engineered specifically for Astrine physiology. Biological warfare? Maya asked. We have no evidence of external attack, the Emperor said, but neither do we understand how such a pathogen could develop naturally. Ilara moved closer to the display. I want to see my neural scans alongside the infection pattern. The scientists exchanged glances, but Zell complied, bringing up Ilara's brain maps beside the pathogen's attack profile. Their mirror images, Maya observed, seeing immediately what Ilara had suspected. The pathogen targets exactly the structures that Ilara lacks. Emperor Torin's skin flashed with surprise. Is this confirmation that her condition and this outbreak are connected? Not necessarily, Maya interjected, but it could help us develop a treatment. If we understand why these neural pathways never developed in Ilara's brain, we might learn how to protect them in others. The next days passed in a blur of intense work. Ilara submitted to countless tests, enduring the clinical detachment of scientists who had once shunned her. Maya worked alongside Astrine researchers, bridging the gap between their advanced telepathic science and human problem-solving approaches. As they worked, the situation outside the facility deteriorated. More cities fell into chaos as the telepathic network failed. The carefully ordered Astrine society, built entirely around shared consciousness, began to fracture. Without their mental connection, many Astrines struggled with basic functions. They had never developed the robust non-telepathic communication systems that humans took for granted. They need to learn what I was forced to learn, Ilara told Maya one night as they took a rare break, watching the city lights flicker below. How to exist as an individual mind. That kind of adaptation takes time, Maya replied gently. Time they may not have. Ilara's skin rippled with determination. Then we need to work faster. Their breakthrough came from an unexpected direction. While examining Ilara's earliest developmental scans, Maya noticed something odd. These protein markers, she said, pointing to microscopic structures in fetal neural tissue. They're identical to compounds found in the Tyrillian frost lichen from Europa. Impossible, Zell responded. Tyrillian compounds are not compatible with Astrine biology. Unless, Ilara said slowly, they were specifically introduced to be incompatible, to inhibit development of telepathic structures. The laboratory fell silent as the implication settled over everyone present. Who would have access to Tyrillian compounds 27 years ago? Maya asked. And access to the royal medical facilities. All eyes turned to Emperor Torin, whose luminescence had dimmed to near darkness. One person, he said, his voice hollow. Your mother. Ilara's skin flashed with shock. Mother, why would she deliberately prevent my telepathic development? The Emperor moved to a secure terminal, his authorization unlocking files that had been sealed for decades. A hologram appeared, a recording of Empress Lyra, her resemblance to Ilara striking. If you're viewing this, Torin, then the safeguard has become necessary, the recorded Empress began. I have altered our child's neural development to prevent telepathic connection. This was not done out of cruelty, but necessity. Our scientists have detected a flaw in the telepathic network, a vulnerability that could someday be exploited to collapse the entire collective mind. Should that day come, an Astrine without telepathy will be immune, and possibly hold the key to rebuilding what was lost. The recording continued, detailing the Empress's work with a secret scientific council that had identified the vulnerability in the telepathic network, a vulnerability that someone had now exploited. She made you different to save us, Maya said softly when the recording ended, and I exiled you for it, the Emperor added, his voice heavy with regret. Your mother died before she could tell me the truth. All these years. Ilara's skin cycled through complex emotions. Anger, hurt, understanding, and finally, resolve. We can assign blame later, she said firmly. Right now, we need to use what we've learned. The Tyrillian compounds didn't just prevent my telepathic development. They created natural antibodies against telepathic disruption. If we can synthesize those antibodies, we might be able to create a treatment, cell-finished, already moving to reconfigure the lab equipment. For 3 days and nights, they worked without rest. The synthesized antibodies were modified, tested, refined, and tested again. Outside, the situation worsened. Nearly 80% of the population had lost telepathic function, and basic services were failing across the planet. Finally, they had a viable treatment, one that would not restore telepathic function immediately, but would stop the pathogen's progression and allow natural healing. We need to distribute this planet-wide, Maya said, looking at the small vial of luminescent blue liquid they had produced. But how? Your medical infrastructure is collapsing. Ilara, who had been quiet for some time, looked up with determination in her eyes. There is one way. The emergency broadcast system. It was designed to transmit directly to the neural implants all Astrines receive at birth. It's never been used for medical distribution, but theoretically, the transmission could carry the treatment's molecular pattern, Zell said, understanding immediately. The implants would reconfigure to produce the antibodies locally. But who can authorize such a broadcast? Maya asked. It would require administrative access to systems that must be failing now. I can, Emperor Torin said, from the Imperial Beacon. But with the telepathic network down, I cannot access it remotely. We would need to reach the beacon physically, through a city in chaos. Maya looked at Ilara, seeing the same thought form between them. I can guide us, Ilara said. I've navigated this world without telepathy my entire life. The journey through the capital city was harrowing. Without the coordinating influence of the collective mind, panic had taken hold. Astrines wandered in confusion or huddled in fearful groups. The elegant automated systems of the city, all designed to be controlled telepathically, stood useless. Ilara led their small group. Herself, Maya, the Emperor, and 2 scientists carrying the precious treatment through less traveled paths. She had memorized the city's layout during her isolated childhood, finding solace in knowledge when connection was denied her. This way, she directed, leading them through a service tunnel that connected to the base of the Imperial Beacon, a towering spire that housed the emergency broadcast system. At the base of the tower, they encountered a group of disoriented royal guards, their training insufficient without telepathic coordination. Your Majesty. One recognized the Emperor, his relief evident. The systems we cannot access. Stand aside. The Emperor commanded. We carry the cure. The ascent up the tower was arduous without the normally functioning lift systems. By the time they reached the broadcast chamber, all were exhausted. Emperor Turan approached the central console, a crystalline structure that responded to his unique biometric signature. As the system activated, Holographic interfaces sprung to life around them. The broadcast pattern needs to be encoded precisely, Zell cautioned, preparing the treatment sample. One error could render it ineffective, or worse. I'll handle the encoding, Ilara said, stepping forward. My neural structure is the template, after all. As she worked, Maya watched the city through the tower's transparent walls. Fires had broken out in several districts. The perfect order of Estrene society had collapsed into chaos with frightening speed. You're not just saving lives, Maya said quietly to Ilara. You're saving an entire way of life. A way of life that had no place for me. Ilara replied, her fingers moving steadily across the crystalline interface. Until now. Finally, the encoding was complete. The treatment was ready to broadcast. The system requires dual authorization, the Emperor said, a safeguard established after the Great Schism. It needs 2 royal signatures. He placed his hand on one crystal panel, which glowed in response to his touch. Then he looked at Ilara. Daughter, he said, his voice thick with emotion his telepathic abilities would normally have hidden. I never acknowledged your true worth. I saw only what you lacked, not what you offered. I ask forgiveness I do not deserve. Ilara's skin flickered with complex emotions. There will be time for reconciliation later, Father. Now, we have a world to save. She placed her hand on the second panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the crystal flared with brilliant light, accepting her royal signature despite her difference. The broadcast began, sending the encoded treatment to every neural implant on the planet. Through the windows, they watched as ripples of light spread through the city below. Estrene's responding as the treatment took effect. It's working, Zell confirmed, monitoring the feedback signals. Neural pathways are stabilizing. The pathogen is being neutralized. In the days that followed, the crisis slowly abated. Telepathic function returned gradually, the collective mind rebuilding itself one connection at a time. But something had changed fundamentally in Estrene society. The experience of disconnection had transformed them. Having no isolation, they now valued connection differently. And having survived through non-telepathic means, they began to develop backup systems and alternative communication methods. Most significantly, their view of Ilara transformed. The princess, once hidden away as a shameful secret, was now celebrated as the salvation of their species. The neural pattern that had been considered a defect was recognized as a critical safeguard, exactly as her mother had intended. 1 month after the crisis, Maya prepared to return to Earth. Her research had yielded discoveries that would revolutionize human understanding of neural systems, while the diplomatic relations between Earth and Astrea had strengthened immeasurably. You could stay longer, Ilara said as they stood in the royal gardens, now open to the public as part of the new changes sweeping Estrene society. There's still so much work to be done. Earth is calling me back, Maya replied. But I'll return. And in the meantime, you have plenty to do here. Ilara nodded. As newly appointed Minister of Interspecies Relations, she would lead the effort to build stronger connections with non-telepathic species, drawing on her unique experience of living between 2 worlds. You know, Maya said, looking out over the garden, where Estrenes now practiced both telepathic and verbal communication, learning to balance both in their rebuilt society. Your mother was brilliant. She didn't just save your people from a pathogen. She forced them to experience difference and grow from it. And she gave me you, Ilara added softly, a friend who saw value in my difference when no one else did. Humans are good at that. Maya smiled. Finding strength in diversity is how we survived without a shared consciousness, and now your people understand that too. As the garden filled with the sounds of spoken conversation alongside the silent flow of telepathic communication, Maya reflected on how one connection between a human scientist and an outcast princess had bridged 2 worlds and transformed both forever. In saving her people, Ilara had not only found her place among them, but had helped them evolve into something better. A civilization that valued both connection and individuality, both the shared consciousness that made them unique and the diverse perspectives that made them strong. And in standing by Ilara when no one else would, humanity had proven that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from power or technology, but from the simple willingness to see value in difference.